There are moments in life when protection around you intensifies in ways you cannot fully explain. When systems shift, atmospheres tighten, and you sense that something larger than routine circumstances is unfolding. And it is in those moments that you must understand this is not coincidence, but escalation. Not panic, but positioning. Not paranoia, but purpose becoming visible. When heaven determines that a life carries consequences beyond the ordinary, protection adjusts accordingly, because destiny of weight requires guardianship of weight. You may not have always recognized it, but there have been seasons where unseen hands redirected dangers you never knew were approaching. Conversations that could have harmed you dissolved before they formed. Opportunities that seemed promising quietly closed because they would have led you off course. This is what divine protection looks like when it becomes active rather than passive. Isaiah 52:12 declares that the Lord goes before you and is your rear guard, a framing of protection that surrounds rather than reacts. It is strategic, layered, intentional. When protection escalates, it is not because you are fragile, but because your assignment is significant. David was not shielded because he was the strongest in his family. He was shielded because he was the carrier of a future throne. The shepherd boy carried a nation's continuity, and heaven adjusted circumstances around him accordingly. In the same way, when your life begins to intersect with purpose that affects more than yourself, layers of defense shift around you. Psalm 91:11 speaks of angels commanded concerning you. And whether you interpret that spiritually or metaphorically, the principle remains. When purpose intensifies, coverage expands. You may have felt recently that attention around you has changed, that your movements matter more, that your decisions echo louder than before. This is not imagination, it is elevation. Elevation increases visibility, and visibility requires reinforcement. Protection is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is subtle, like instincts that warn you without explanation, like delays that frustrate you but later prove merciful, like unexpected allies who appear precisely when needed. These are not random alignments. They are structured responses to a calling that cannot be left exposed. Oprah Winfrey once spoke about feeling guided beyond circumstance, about sensing that her rise was not accidental, but orchestrated. Whether one attributes that to faith or intuition, the pattern is recognizable. When influence expands, alignment intensifies. You are not being guarded because you are threatened. You are being guarded because you are consequential. The difference is critical. Threats are reactions. Consequence is recognition. When heaven mobilizes protection, it is acknowledging that your survival matters to a larger story. Psalm 23 frames the Lord as shepherd, a guide who not only leads but protects through valleys. Valleys are not avoided, they are navigated. And navigation requires oversight. You may not see the watchman, but you will feel the stability. You may not trace every redirection, but you will later recognize their necessity. Protection is covenant, not coincidence. Covenant implies agreement, intention, structure. Your life is not drifting randomly through hazards. It is moving through territory mapped with foresight. This escalation of protection is not meant to create fear, but clarity. Clarity that you are no longer operating at an ordinary level. Clarity that your presence affects environments. Clarity that your decisions carry ripple effects. When Joseph moved from pit to palace, scrutiny increased, visibility intensified. But so did positioning. What felt like exposure was in fact endorsement. When Esther stepped into royal courts, the stakes rose. But so did the shield around her influence. Elevation is never isolated from protection. They rise together. If you have sensed heightened awareness around you, it is not because something is wrong, it is because something is shifting. When destiny matures, systems respond. Sometimes earthly structures adjust. Sometimes relationships reorganize. Sometimes circumstances rearrange. And while you may interpret this as disruption, it is reinforcement. Reinforcement ensures that what has been assigned to you cannot be prematurely extinguished. Isaiah 54:17 declares that no weapon formed against you shall prosper, not because weapons will not be formed, but because outcome is secured. Protection does not eliminate opposition, it neutralizes its effect. You are not being wrapped in fragility, you are being fortified for impact. This is the season where you must understand that intensified protection is evidence of intensified purpose. Heaven does not escalate defense around what is disposable. It fortifies what is destined. And if the layers around you feel thicker, the awareness sharper, the positioning more deliberate, it is because your life has crossed into terrain where influence expands and consequences multiply. You are not merely surviving. You are being secured for something that extends beyond your present understanding. Protection has escalated not out of fear, but out of affirmation. Affirmation that your mission carries weight, that your presence shifts atmospheres, and that what unfolds next requires you intact, steady, and fully aligned. As protection intensifies around a life marked by purpose, what often follows is a heightened awareness that you are no longer moving unnoticed through ordinary spaces. The margin has disappeared, and the center has arrived. And while that shift can feel unsettling at first, it is the natural progression of elevation. When heaven advances a calling, it does not leave it exposed to unnecessary vulnerability. And that is why circumstances may begin arranging themselves in ways that feel deliberate, almost choreographed. Conversations that once overlooked you now weigh your words differently. Opportunities that once passed you by now pause at your door. And environments that once ignored your presence now subtly adjust when you enter. This is not ego. It is assignment becoming visible. Jeremiah 29:11 speaks of plans to prosper and not to harm, plans with hope and future embedded within them, and plans of that magnitude require insulation. Insulation is not restriction. It is reinforcement. When a building is constructed to withstand storms, its framework is strengthened long before the winds arrive. Likewise, when your life begins to intersect with influence that affects more than yourself, reinforcement surrounds you. Protection may manifest through people placed strategically in your path, through instincts sharpened beyond explanation, through interruptions that redirect you from unseen hazards. These are not random interventions. They are structural safeguards. Consider Joseph again, elevated to Pharaoh's court not because of luck, but because preservation had followed him through prison walls and betrayal. Every injustice he endured was filtered through a protective decree that would not allow his story to end prematurely. In the same way, your preservation through seasons that should have undone you is not accidental. It is evidence. Evidence that something about your journey required continuity. Esther's rise to royal influence came with scrutiny and risk, but also with positioning that shielded her until the appointed moment. Elevation and exposure walk together, but exposure without covering is destruction. Therefore, covering expands in proportion to calling. You may feel the weight of that expansion, a sense that your life is no longer entirely your own, that your steps echo beyond personal consequence. This weight is not surveillance. It is stewardship. Stewardship of influence, stewardship of voice, stewardship of impact. Psalm 27:1 declares the Lord as light and salvation, stronghold and refuge, framing protection not as fear-based reaction, but as stable infrastructure. Infrastructure is built to support movement, not restrict it. When heaven mobilizes protection, it is not confining you. It is fortifying the route ahead. And sometimes earthly systems align in ways that seem unusually attentive. Doors close that would have entangled you. Alliances dissolve that would have diluted you. Barriers appear that prevent you from stepping into harm disguised as opportunity. These shifts can feel inconvenient until hindsight reveals their precision. Protection often interrupts comfort before it prevents catastrophe. If you have sensed that certain paths were blocked without explanation, understand that blockage can be blessing. Reinforcement sometimes looks like resistance. Psalm 91 speaks of refuge and fortress, imagery that suggests both shelter and strength. A fortress is not fragile. It is architectural intention. Your life is being treated with that level of intention, not because you are fragile, but because your mission is formative. When David faced Goliath, the army saw threat. David saw assignment. But unseen reinforcement had been forming him in fields long before the battlefield. Lions and bears were preparation. Isolation was training. Obscurity was insulation. And when visibility arrived, he was not abandoned. Protection does not eliminate confrontation. It ensures continuity through it. The escalation you sense now is not about fear of loss. It is about confirmation of value. Heaven does not mobilize around insignificance. It secures what carries consequence. And consequence is what your life now holds. Every redirection, every reinforcement, every unseen barrier that stands between you and harm is testimony that your journey matters beyond the immediate. You are not wandering into visibility unguarded. You are stepping into it fortified. And as this chapter closes, recognize this truth. Intensified protection is not a warning of danger. It is an announcement of importance. It signals that what unfolds next is not casual, not accidental, not small. It signals that your life has crossed into terrain where influence expands and stakes rise. And rather than shrinking under that awareness, you are called to stand steady within it. Because the same force that elevated you has fortified you. The same decree that advanced you has encircled you. And nothing that attempts to interrupt what has been ordained will be permitted to override the protection already in place. You are not exposed. You are established. And the reinforcement surrounding you is not fear-driven. It is destiny-driven, ensuring that what has been written over your life will unfold without premature interruption. Elevation never arrives quietly. Even when it begins in subtle shifts, it eventually moves you from the margins into visibility, and visibility changes everything. What once felt private now carries weight. What once went unnoticed now draws reaction, and what once blended into the background now shapes the atmosphere. This transition from hidden to elevated is not accidental, nor is it punishment. It is unveiling. Joseph's life illustrates this movement with precision, from pit to prison to palace. Each stage preparing him for a moment when obscurity could no longer contain his calling. When he stood before Pharaoh, interpretation of dreams was not the miracle. Positioning was. Years of concealment had forged capacity for exposure. In the same way, the shift you feel now is not sudden promotion without preparation. It is revelation of what has been forming quietly. Jeremiah 29:11 speaks of plans crafted with intention, and intention implies timing. When timing aligns, concealment gives way to clarity. You may notice that people respond differently to you now, that rooms feel altered when you enter, that conversations pause or redirect in your presence. This is not coincidence. It is recognition. Recognition does not always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with scrutiny, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with resistance. But all forms signal visibility. Visibility is confirmation that your life carries influence. Esther experienced this. when she stepped into royal courts, chosen not merely for beauty, but for placement. Her hidden years prepared her for public consequence. Elevation brought risk, but also authority. David, too, moved from shepherd fields into battlefield prominence. Obscurity trained him, spotlight tested him. And in both cases, exposure was not ego-driven, it was purpose-driven. When heaven unveils a life, it does so with layers of reinforcement. Protection amplifies authority rather than limiting it. Romans 8:28 reminds us that all things work together for good for those called according to purpose. Calling implies consequence. Consequence implies attention. Attention implies visibility. You cannot influence what cannot be seen. Therefore, elevation requires exposure. But exposure without preparation is collapse. This is why your hidden seasons mattered. The nights no one applauded, the decisions no one noticed, the discipline no one rewarded. These built infrastructure beneath the spotlight. Transformation imagery captures this transition best. A tree breaking through soil does not erupt overnight. It pushes upward through pressure, invisible until the moment it pierces surface. Once visible, it cannot retreat back into seed. Its growth now affects space around it. Your rise is similar. Once hidden potential crosses into manifestation, environments adjust. Some will be inspired, others unsettled. But reaction itself is evidence of impact. Visibility means your life now carries consequence beyond personal boundaries. Influence expands not because you demanded it, but because alignment matured. When light intensifies, shadows react. But light does not apologize for illumination. Isaiah 61 declares, "Arise, shine, for your light has come." Light is not self-created, it is revealed, and revelation requires courage. Courage to accept that you are no longer operating in anonymity. Courage to recognize that scrutiny accompanies significance. Elevation is not about fame, it is about responsibility. Responsibility for how you move, how you speak, how you decide. Once elevated, neutrality disappears. Your choices ripple outward. Your presence carries gravity. You may feel the weight of this shift, the awareness that you cannot move as casually as before. This weight is not burden, it is confirmation. Confirmation that preparation has ended and unveiling has begun. When Joseph stood in Pharaoh's court, he could not retreat to the pit. When Esther stepped before the king, she could not return to invisibility. When David faced Goliath, anonymity vanished. In the same way, the season of concealment in your life has transitioned. The spotlight now resting on you is not theatrical. It is divine acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that your resilience, character, and endurance have qualified you for visibility. And though elevation brings vulnerability, it also brings backing. The same force that lifted you fortifies you. Exposure does not mean abandonment. It means endorsement. You are no longer hidden because your assignment can no longer remain private. Visibility is confirmation of calling, and calling once revealed cannot be reversed. This chapter marks the transition from shadow to stage, from unnoticed to undeniable. And though that transition may feel intense, it is evidence that purpose has matured beyond concealment and stepped into consequence. With visibility comes a recalibration of identity, because once you are elevated, you can no longer move as though you are unseen. Anonymity allowed experimentation, recovery, and quiet growth. But elevation requires steadiness, clarity, and composure under observation. When a life steps into the spotlight of purpose, the margin for carelessness narrows, not because perfection is demanded, but because influence now multiplies consequence. David could make private mistakes as a shepherd, but as king, his decisions shaped a nation. Esther's hesitation would not only affect her comfort, but her people's survival. Joseph's integrity in obscurity became the foundation for authority in prominence, and in the same way, your elevation means that who you are now carries ripple effects. This is not pressure meant to crush you, it is weight designed to mature you. Weight strengthens structure. Architecture that holds significant load must be reinforced at its core. Your character has been reinforced through seasons of trial precisely so that visibility would not fracture you. Romans 8:28 affirms that even painful chapters were contributing to this formation. What felt like delay was insulation. What felt like rejection was refinement. What felt like isolation was alignment. Now that you stand visible, you may sense both admiration and opposition rising simultaneously. This is natural. Elevation exposes not only your strength, but the insecurity of those unsettled by it. When light intensifies, it reveals contrast. Contrast invites reaction, but reaction does not determine reality. Your role is not to manage how others respond, but to remain anchored in who you have become. Spotlight is not an invitation to performance, it is a demand for authenticity. The world does not need imitation. It recognizes consistency, and consistency under scrutiny is credibility. The more visible you become, the more temptation arises to defend, explain, or prove yourself. But maturity understands that explanation is not always necessary. Integrity will outlast accusation. Just as Joseph did not need to argue his case when famine validated his leadership, your outcomes will speak. Elevation also amplifies protection. Systems adjust around you because influence attracts both opportunity and challenge. You may notice that certain alliances solidify while others dissolve. Some relationships deepen in loyalty, others distance themselves in discomfort. This is not loss, it is filtration. Visibility clarifies alignment. Those connected to your purpose will remain. Those attached to your obscurity may withdraw. Filtration is mercy. It prevents contamination of calling. Jeremiah 29:11 assures that plans remain benevolent even when transitions feel disruptive. Elevation may also bring internal shifts, heightened awareness, sharper intuition, stronger discernment. These are tools required for visible leadership. You cannot navigate exposure with naivety. Wisdom becomes shield. Discipline becomes armor. Humility becomes anchor. Without humility, elevation corrupts. Without discipline, visibility distracts. Without discernment, influence misdirects. Therefore, your hidden seasons were not wasted. They cultivated these internal reinforcements. Imagine a tree that has finally broken through soil. Once visible, it faces wind, heat, and scrutiny from the elements. But its roots, formed in darkness, stabilize it. Your roots are what sustain you now. Do not envy those who rise quickly without foundation. Height without depth collapses. Your rise was slower because it required durability. Visibility is not the climax, it is commencement. Commencement of responsibility, commencement of influence, commencement of impact that extends beyond personal boundaries. The atmosphere changes when you enter rooms because you carry accumulated resilience. Survival forged gravity. Gravity commands space without demand. Some will feel inspired by it, others threatened, but both responses confirm presence. You are no longer hidden because hiding would contradict purpose. And while exposure may feel intense, remember that protection has expanded in proportion. You are not standing alone under scrutiny. Reinforcement surrounds you. Just as Esther was positioned within palace systems that both elevated and shielded her, your environment is adjusting to sustain your influence. Elevation is not ego, it is assignment. Assignment is not about spotlight for applause. It is about stewardship of impact. And as you continue moving forward, Understand that visibility confirms calling. Calling demands maturity. Maturity requires steadiness. And steadiness is what you now embody. You have moved from hidden to elevated, from unseen to undeniable. And though the spotlight is bright, it does not blind you. It reveals you. And what it reveals has already been shaped, strengthened, and secured for this exact moment. Elevation does not only attract opportunity, it also exposes opposition that once operated comfortably in shadow, because when light intensifies, concealment becomes difficult. Betrayal and envy rarely reveal themselves during seasons of obscurity. They surface when visibility increases and influence begins to expand. Judas walked beside Jesus in proximity, shared meals, witnessed miracles. Yet when purpose reached its critical hour, his hidden motives surfaced. Betrayal did not create the weakness within him, it revealed it. In the same way, as your life has moved from hidden to elevated, motives around you are clarifying. Some who once smiled comfortably in your quiet seasons now feel unsettled by your visibility. Envy is not always loud. It often disguises itself as subtle criticism, passive resistance, or exaggerated familiarity. But light accelerates exposure. King Saul once celebrated David's victories until the songs shifted in his favor. When recognition transferred, insecurity ignited. Saul's jealousy was not triggered by David's wrongdoing, but by David's rise. Insecurity reacts to comparison. When purpose matures visibly, those who measure themselves against it can spiral. Yet understand this clearly. Exposure is not your responsibility. Illumination handles it. Isaiah 61 declares that light rises, and when it does, darkness cannot remain neutral. It either retreats or reacts. You may begin noticing behaviors that once seemed intentional, now appearing intentional. Patterns of subtle undermining, whispers that circulate quietly, energy that shifts when your name is mentioned. This is not paranoia, it is awareness. Elevation sharpens perception, but awareness must not devolve into bitterness. The battle is not against flesh and blood, as Ephesians 6:12 reminds us. Opposition often carries spiritual undertones rooted in insecurity, fear, and self-preservation. When your life becomes evidence of growth, it unintentionally confronts stagnation in others, and confrontation without accusation can still provoke resentment. Judas's regret did not reverse his betrayal. Saul's obsession did not secure his throne. In both cases, insecurity accelerated self-destruction. Opposition, fueled by envy, consumes itself. The more it studies you to find weakness, the more it reveals its own instability. Light functions as mirror. Those unwilling to examine themselves may attempt to shatter the mirror rather than adjust their reflection. Yet mirrors do not initiate conflict. They reveal truth. Your elevation is mirror-like. It exposes what is unresolved around you. And this exposure can feel uncomfortable, even threatening, because proximity to light intensifies contrast. But you must not internalize reactions that are not rooted in your wrongdoing. If your integrity remains intact, opposition is diagnostic, not destructive. It diagnoses insecurity in others. Saul's downfall was not David's aggression, it was Saul's fear. Judas's collapse was not Christ's betrayal, it was Judas's greed. Opposition rooted in envy eventually exposes itself publicly. Motives leak. Inconsistencies surface. Alliances fracture. Because deception struggles under sustained illumination. And while betrayal wounds, it also clarifies. It reveals who is aligned with your assignment and who was attached only to your obscurity. This revelation, though painful, is protective. Filtration preserves focus. When David fled Saul's rage, he was not retreating from destiny. He was being preserved for it. Sometimes distance from those threatened by your rise is necessary insulation. You cannot steward visibility while carrying hidden hostility in close proximity. Exposure is mercy disguised as discomfort. It prevents deeper sabotage later. As light continues to rise in your life,
understand that not everyone celebrating your ascent will remain comfortable with its height. Some will withdraw, some will resist, some will reveal motives through overreaction. But their exposure is not your burden to manage. It is evidence that your life now operates at a frequency where concealment cannot survive. Opposition confronted by light either transforms or disintegrates. And if it disintegrates, it confirms misalignment. This chapter marks the understanding that betrayal and envy are not interruptions of destiny, but confirmations of it. They surface when significance increases. They unravel when illumination intensifies. And though the experience may sting, it ultimately strengthens. Because exposure of hidden enemies ensures that your path forward is not contaminated by shadows pretending to be allies. Light does not merely elevate you, it protects you by revealing what cannot travel with you into what comes next. As exposure unfolds, you begin to recognize a pattern that has repeated throughout history. Those who attempt to undermine what heaven elevates often collapse under the weight of their own schemes. Betrayal is rarely sustainable because deception requires constant maintenance, and maintenance under light becomes exhausting. Judas could not carry the tension of his choice once consequence materialized. Remorse surfaced, but reversal was impossible. Saul could not silence the insecurity that grew louder with every victory David achieved. Jealousy consumed clarity until it eroded his leadership. In both cases, opposition was not defeated by confrontation, but by self-destruction. This is the nature of envy when confronted by purpose. It corrodes the one who carries it. You may observe similar dynamics unfolding around your own rise. Those who once whispered may now contradict themselves. Those who once attempted subtle sabotage may grow careless in their hostility. Exposure accelerates when pressure increases. The spotlight resting on your life also shines on the motives orbiting it. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us that the struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against forces that manipulate through fear and insecurity. Understanding this keeps your heart steady. You are not called to retaliate. You are called to remain anchored. Retaliation drags you into terrain beneath your assignment. Steadiness keeps you aligned above it. Isaiah 54:17 declares that no weapon formed against you shall prosper, and that includes weapons disguised as rumor, manipulation, or feigned loyalty. Prosperity of a weapon is measured by outcome, not formation. Formation may occur, attempts may surface, but their effectiveness is neutralized when integrity remains intact. What often surprises you during exposure is how quickly alliances built on insecurity fracture. Unity rooted in jealousy cannot endure sustained light. Just as Saul's court gradually recognized his instability, environments eventually recalibrate around truth. Betrayal may feel isolating in the moment, but it is refining. It trims what cannot accompany you into the next phase. Light does not only illuminate enemies, it reveals loyal allies more clearly. Those who remain steady through scrutiny prove alignment. Filtration is not loss, it is clarity, and clarity is essential for stewardship of elevation. If hidden hostility remained concealed, it could metastasize later. Exposure prevents deeper damage. Consider how foxes operate in shadows, subtle and patient, yet once brought into open field, their advantage diminishes. Hidden motives thrive in obscurity. They falter under illumination. The more they attempt to discredit you, the more they reveal the insecurity driving them. Their overreach becomes evidence. Their exaggeration becomes confession. Their obsession
becomes testimony of your significance. And while witnessing this may feel heavy, remember that your role is not to manage their unraveling. Your role is to maintain composure. Light does the work. Psalm 27 frames the Lord as stronghold, reinforcing that your stability is not self-generated but sourced. When opposition intensifies, composure becomes authority. Storms reveal structure. If you remain unmoved while hostility surfaces, it signals reinforcement. Enemies often expect reaction. Reaction validates their narrative. Restraint dismantles it. Your silence can be more disarming than argument. Your consistency more persuasive than defense. Exposure also reshapes your perception of trust. It does not make you cynical. It makes you discerning. Discernment does not harden the heart. It protects it. Once betrayal surfaces, you learn to evaluate alignment more carefully. This is growth, not suspicion. Growth sharpens intuition. As your life continues forward, understand that hidden enemies surfacing is not evidence that something has gone wrong. It is evidence that something has matured. Maturity attracts testing. Testing reveals authenticity. Authenticity outlasts deception. Those who operate from envy may experience temporary noise, but noise fades. Stability remains. Judas's name became synonymous with betrayal. Saul's legacy became cautionary. David's endurance became enduring. History records collapse and resilience differently. Collapse is momentary. Resilience becomes narrative. And your narrative is being written not by the whispers around you, but by the steadiness within you. Exposure clarifies the battlefield. It shows you who is for you, who is against you, and who is simply uncertain. Clarity strengthens strategy. Once enemies reveal themselves, they lose the element of surprise. And surprise is their greatest weapon. Now that surprise has been removed, you can move forward without illusion. The chapter of hidden hostility is closing, because concealment cannot survive sustained elevation. Betrayal has revealed itself. Envy has exposed its source. And what remains is alignment. You are not diminished by opposition. You are defined by how you remain through it. And remaining steady while others unravel is proof that your rise is not accidental, but ordained. Light has done its work. What was hidden is now visible, and what is visible can no longer sabotage from shadow. As visibility increases and opposition exposes itself, protection must be understood as more than external circumstance. It is multidimensional, layered across spiritual, emotional, psychological, and even energetic levels, forming what can only be described as fortress architecture around your life. This is not mystical exaggeration, but structural reality for anyone walking in elevated purpose. Ephesians 6:16 speaks of the shield of faith extinguishing flaming arrows, imagery that suggests not avoidance of attack, but neutralization of impact. Arrows may be released, but they do not penetrate. This distinction matters because protection does not eliminate tension, it filters it. Psalm 91:2 describes the Lord as refuge and fortress, and a fortress is not fragile, it is engineered. It absorbs pressure without collapse. Your life now functions with that kind of reinforcement. What once would have destabilized you emotionally now dissipates more quickly. Negativity directed toward you seems to lose momentum before reaching your core. Conversations meant to disturb you fail to root deeply. This is not coincidence. It is shielding. Consider electromagnetic shielding in physics, where conductive layers prevent external interference from disrupting internal systems. The interference may exist, but the system remains stable because insulation surrounds it. Spiritually and psychologically, something similar occurs when faith, clarity, and alignment form a perimeter. Negativity cannot easily attach. Distraction cannot easily anchor. Doubt may knock, but it does not occupy. Psalm 34:7
says, "The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him."
Language that implies perimeter defense. Encampment suggests strategy, not random hovering, but stationed reinforcement. This reinforcement is not limited to metaphysical interpretation. It manifests in mental resilience, emotional boundaries, disciplined thought patterns. Protection is as much about what you refuse to internalize as what you are spared from externally. When you cultivate discernment, you filter energy. When you maintain integrity, you strengthen architecture. When you guard your thoughts, you fortify foundation. Psalm 121, 5-8 describes the Lord watching over your coming and going, preserving you from harm. Preservation is continuous, not episodic. It functions in daily rhythms. Architecture hidden beneath a skyscraper supports weight no one sees. Without foundation, height collapses. Your hidden reinforcement, faith cultivated in isolation, discipline built through trial, humility shaped through correction, now supports the height of visibility. Mandela endured confinement not as defeat, but as internal construction. Rosa Parks's quiet resolve became structural resistance. Both illustrate that visible impact rests upon invisible reinforcement. Your aura, to use contemporary language, is not fragile. It is armored. Armor does not eliminate awareness of threat. It prevents penetration. High-frequency filters in advanced technology block harmful interference while allowing beneficial signals through. Similarly, spiritual armor filters influence. Encouragement penetrates. Toxicity dissipates. This filtering capacity has strengthened within you. Storms once shook you more violently. Now they meet resistance. Like earthquake-resistant architecture designed to flex without fracture,
You absorb pressure without breaking. Flexing is not weakness. It is design. Rigidity snaps. Resilience bends and returns upright. This resilience is not accidental. It was cultivated. Every trial added reinforcement. Every exposure sharpened discernment. Every confrontation strengthened boundaries. Fortress architecture includes both walls and gates. Walls prevent intrusion. Gates allow access selectively. Wisdom determines who enters. Elevation requires gated integrity. Not isolation, but intentional permeability. You are not required to absorb every opinion. You are not obligated to entertain every narrative. Fortress mentality does not mean hostility. It means clarity of perimeter, and that clarity is necessary when influence expands. The higher you rise, the more wind you encounter. But wind tests structure. It does not dismantle it when foundation is secure. Your protection now extends beyond mere circumstance. It shapes mindset. It guards heart. It filters atmosphere. It neutralizes negativity before it roots. This is covenant protection, not coincidence. It operates across dimensions: spiritual conviction, psychological stability, emotional intelligence, relational discernment. When these layers synchronize, you become difficult to destabilize. Opposition may circle, but penetration fails. Criticism may surface, but it does not corrode identity. Distraction may approach, but it does not hijack focus. Fortress architecture does not boast, it stands, and standing under pressure is evidence of reinforcement. You are not fragile under spotlight. You are fortified, not isolated from impact, but insulated against destruction. Protection surrounds you, not as surveillance, but as sacred structure. And as elevation continues, this architecture ensures that your assignment remains intact, your mind remains clear, and your path remains guarded from forces that cannot override what has been divinely secured. As this fortress architecture continues to solidify around your life, you begin to recognize that protection is not merely defensive, it is strategic, preserving clarity,
so that you can move decisively without contamination from external chaos. Protection is not about hiding you from pressure. It is about ensuring pressure refines rather than corrupts. Psalm 121 declares that the keeper watches over your coming and going, guarding you both now and forevermore. And this continuity suggests that preservation is not event-based, but ongoing. It follows you into rooms, into decisions, into conversations, into opportunities that carry weight. The reinforcement you carry now operates like a high-grade filtration system, allowing what aligns with purpose to enter, while neutralizing what seeks to distort. In physics, resonance determines which frequencies amplify and which cancel each other out. Your spiritual and psychological resonance has shifted, meaning certain energies no longer harmonize with you. What once unsettled you now feels misaligned rather than overwhelming. What once tempted you now feels incompatible rather than attractive. This is evidence of strengthened perimeter. Ephesians 6 frames armor not as decoration but necessity, because elevation exposes you to increased scrutiny and influence. Armor does not imply fear. It implies readiness. Readiness for responsibility, readiness for challenge, readiness for stewardship of visibility. Mandela's endurance was not accidental resilience. It was cultivated inner architecture that allowed him to emerge from confinement without bitterness. Rosa Parks' quiet defiance was not spontaneous bravery. It was built upon convictions reinforced long before that pivotal moment. In the same way, your ability to remain steady now is the product of unseen reinforcement. Fortress architecture includes hidden beams that carry visible floors. Your beams are humility, discipline, discernment, and faith. Humility prevents arrogance as influence expands. Discipline prevents distraction as opportunity multiplies. Discernment prevents entanglement with misaligned alliances. Faith prevents fear from eroding clarity. When these beams remain intact, height does not threaten stability. Protection also extends to emotional equilibrium. Negativity directed toward you may increase as visibility rises, but it loses potency when not internalized. Negativity requires invitation to become influence. When you refuse to rehearse accusations, when you refuse to magnify criticism, when you refuse to absorb hostility, you neutralize its force. Psalm 34:7 speaks of an encampment around those aligned with purpose. Encampment implies layered defense, not singular barrier. In practical terms, this means supportive relationships strengthening, intuitive warnings sharpening, and strategic timing adjusting to protect trajectory. You may notice that certain misalignments reveal themselves quickly now. Deception struggles to linger. Inconsistency becomes obvious sooner. This acceleration of clarity is protective. Hidden cracks in architecture cause collapse later. Exposure early prevents disaster. Fortress living is not isolation. It is intentional awareness. Gates remain open for alignment, but closed to toxicity. Elevation requires this boundary discipline. Without it, influence becomes vulnerable. But with it, influence multiplies safely. You are not called to paranoia. You are called to perception. Perception without fear, strength without hostility, protection without pride, architecture that flexes but does not fracture. Earthquake-resistant buildings sway under pressure but remain standing because their design anticipates shock. Your life has been engineered through trial to anticipate pressure. Storms that once destabilized you now reveal durability, and durability becomes testimony. As this chapter closes, understand that your protection is not symbolic exaggeration. It is structural reality. Spiritual conviction, emotional maturity, psychological clarity, relational discernment, and divine alignment form a perimeter that shields your assignment. This perimeter is not surveillance. It is covenant. Not fragility, but fortification. Not fear-driven, but destiny-driven. And as elevation continues, this multi-dimensional reinforcement ensures that you do not merely survive visibility, you steward it. You move forward insulated from corrosion, anchored against manipulation, and steady under scrutiny. Fortress architecture does not eliminate storms. It ensures that storms pass without dismantling what has been built. And what has been built within you now stands strong enough to carry the next chapter of influence without collapse, distortion, or compromise. What ultimately confirms that you have been preserved is not merely the exposure of opposition or the presence of protection, but the resilience forged through every storm that attempted to dismantle you. Resilience is not loud, and it is not dramatic. It is structural endurance that remains after pressure subsides. Storms once felt like threats to your existence, moments where uncertainty pressed so tightly that quitting seemed rational. Yet you did not collapse. You adapted. Like earthquake-resistant buildings, engineered to flex without breaking, you bent under weight, but returned upright. This flexibility is not weakness. It is intelligent strength. Rigidity fractures. Resilience absorbs. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before producing a working filament, not because he was unaware of resistance, but because persistence redefined failure as feedback. In the same way, the setbacks you encountered were not verdicts against you. They were reinforcement for you. Philippians 4:13 speaks of strength through Christ, not as motivational slogan, but as internal reinforcement that sustains when external affirmation disappears. The storm that was meant to intimidate you instead strengthened your footing. Diamonds form under pressure. Pressure did not destroy carbon, it refined it. Similarly, adversity did not erase your calling, it crystallized it. What once felt chaotic now reveals pattern. Each trial added dimension. Each loss sharpened perspective. Each confrontation clarified identity. And through it all, something unshakable formed beneath the surface. Isaiah 54:17 declares that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Weapons were formed. Storms were real. Opposition was tangible. Yet prosperity of those weapons failed. Their intent did not override your preservation. Resilience is the evidence. If destiny were fragile, you would have fractured long ago. But the fact that you remained steady, thinking clearly, moving forward, refining rather than retreating, proves that preservation has been active. The storm did not swallow you. It sculpted you. Architecture built for resilience incorporates flexibility. The eye of a hurricane is calm, despite surrounding chaos. Authority resembles that calm. When you learn to anchor internally, external turbulence loses dominance. Your calm under pressure now carries weight. People notice steadiness. They gravitate toward composure. Resilience becomes silent leadership. But resilience without humility becomes arrogance. Humility is the crown that stabilizes rising influence. James 4:10 reminds us that exaltation follows humility, not self-exaltation. Matthew 23:12 reinforces that those who humble themselves are lifted. Humility does not mean shrinking. It means remembering source, remembering that preservation was not self-generated, remembering that protection was not accidental, remembering that influence is stewardship, not entitlement. As destiny expands, humility guards integrity. Without it, elevation distorts. With it, elevation stabilizes. You may feel the sacred weight of responsibility increasing, like Atlas carrying the world in myth. Yet in your case, the burden is not solitary. 2 Thessalonians 3:3 affirms that the Lord strengthens and protects. Strength does not remove responsibility. It supports it. Destiny carries weight because impact extends beyond you. Decisions ripple. Influence shapes outcomes. But resilience ensures you do not crumble beneath expectation. Expectation once frightened you. Now it clarifies you. The unknown ahead no longer feels like threat. It feels like frontier. Isaiah 55:8 reminds you that higher ways often unfold beyond full understanding. You will not receive a complete map. Destiny rarely reveals the entire blueprint. It provides direction, not detail. Flexibility remains necessary. Readiness replaces rigidity. Storms that once intimidated you now appear as training grounds. Each unknown challenge becomes rehearsal for greater stewardship. Resilience has shifted your perspective. You no longer interpret difficulty as abandonment. You interpret it as refinement. This shift changes everything. Fear diminishes. Courage increases. Humility anchors. Strength stabilizes. And as you move forward into terrain not fully visible, understand this clearly. The storm that once tested you now bows to the structure it helped build. You are not unshakable because life is calm. You are unshakable because storms strengthened your core. Resilience is your fortress. Humility is your crown. And destiny moves ahead not as fragile possibility, but as fortified progression. What lies before you may be vast and partially unseen, but what stands within you has already proven capable of withstanding what once seemed overwhelming. Preservation was not temporary. It was transformative. And transformation has prepared you for the weight of what comes next. As you move deeper into this season, what becomes undeniable is that survival was never the end goal. Refinement was. The storms that once felt like interruptions were in fact architectural recalibrations, reinforcing your foundation so that future weight would not destabilize you. Resilience has shifted from reaction to identity. It is no longer something you summon in crisis. It is something you embody daily. And embodiment changes posture. You no longer brace for collapse at the first sign of pressure. You assess, adjust, and advance. This is the mark of structural maturity. Destiny is rarely delivered in full clarity. It unfolds in layers. And the unknown is not evidence of absence, but invitation to trust. Isaiah 55:8 reminds you that higher ways often operate beyond immediate comprehension. You are not meant to control every variable. You are meant to remain aligned within shifting terrain. The unknown becomes training ground, not threat. Each unfamiliar step strengthens discernment. Each unexpected turn sharpens awareness. And as you continue forward, humility remains your stabilizer. Humility prevents the illusion that resilience was self-made. It reminds you that preservation came through reinforcement beyond your own strength. Philippians 4:13 speaks again to strength through Christ, a strength that does not boast, but steadies. Influence expanding without humility corrodes. Influence anchored in humility multiplies. As opportunities grow and recognition increases, the temptation to internalize applause or to overreact to criticism will surface. Both extremes distort. Humility holds center. James 4:10 affirms that lifting follows lowering. Posture determines trajectory. As destiny expands, humility ensures sustainability. Consider architecture built in earthquake zones. Its design anticipates movement. It does not resist motion rigidly. It absorbs and recalibrates. Your resilience now functions similarly. Unexpected developments will come. Scrutiny may intensify. Responsibility may feel heavier. But flexing under pressure without fracture proves readiness. Resilience without bitterness is rare, yet you carry it. Storms did not make you cynical, they made you discerning. Storms did not shrink you, they strengthened you. This is evidence of preservation. 2 Thessalonians 3:3 declares that the Lord is faithful, strengthening and guarding you. Guarding does not eliminate challenge, it ensures continuity. Continuity is key. Destiny is not defined by singular triumph, but sustained progression. Your journey forward will require continued awareness, measured steps, and disciplined focus. Humility keeps ambition aligned. Resilience keeps momentum steady. The unknown ahead may contain complexity, but complexity does not equal chaos. It equals growth. Growth stretches capacity. Capacity sustains influence, and influence, stewarded well, becomes legacy. Atlas, in mythology, carried the heavens as burden. Your calling carries weight as privilege. Weight indicates significance. But significance without humility fractures. Humility under weight transforms burden into stewardship. As this chapter concludes, recognize that what has been built within you cannot be undone by temporary turbulence. Storms now encounter a structure reinforced by trial. Exposure revealed adversaries. Protection fortified perimeter. Elevation clarified identity. Resilience solidified core. Humility anchored influence. And destiny advances steadily beyond full visibility. You do not need a complete map to move forward. You need conviction. You do not need elimination of uncertainty to act. You need steadiness. And steadiness has been forged in you. The unknown is no longer frightening terrain. It is open landscape awaiting disciplined steps. You are not merely surviving scrutiny. You are stewarding influence. Not merely protected, but positioned. Not merely visible, but fortified. The journey continues not with noise, but with grounded authority. The storms that once roared now bow to the strength they inadvertently built. And as you step forward, remember that resilience is not proof of isolation. It is proof of reinforcement. Humility is not weakness, it is wisdom. And destiny is not fragile. It is unfolding with intentional progression. The spotlight does not consume you, it confirms you. The pressure does not dismantle you, it defines you. And the unknown does not threaten you, it trains you. What lies ahead may not be fully revealed, but what stands within you has already been tested, refined, and secured for the path forward. If this message stirred something in you, do not dismiss it as just another video. Reflection without action fades quickly. Take a moment and respond intentionally. Like this video as a signal that you recognize the season you are in. Share it with someone who feels pressure but doesn't yet understand that pressure is refinement, not rejection. And subscribe so you remain connected to messages that strengthen, sharpen, and steady you for what's ahead. You are not navigating random storms. You are walking through structured formation. You are not under spotlight by accident. You are positioned, and you are not protected without purpose. Everything unfolding around you is reinforcing something unfolding within you. Stay grounded, stay discerning, stay humble as influence grows. The spotlight confirms you, but character sustains you. The storm tested you, but resilience now defines you. And the unknown ahead is not a threat. It is the training ground for greater impact. This is not the end of your story. It is momentum building. Keep moving forward.